Welcome back to ReadingBear. Today, we will take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The first one is titled, Long Calls Equals Better Bonus. Hold my beer. A brief story from my time in a telecoms contact center. I worked for a rather large Australian provider that everyone knows and actively hates, mostly because it's fun to hate them. In this story, we were doing outbound calls to transition people onto the new NBN network. For those of you unfamiliar with Australia's internet, it was third world. Literally, we were slower than Nigeria until we rolled out the NBN and upgraded to slightly faster third world speeds. Also worth mentioning, much like the company I worked for, the NBN was universally hated. 'Cause it was crap. Nuff said. Anyway, like all call centers, we had a bunch of miserable hoops to jump through in order to bring our paycheck up to a level that could be considered humane. Our capitalist overlords refer to these hoops as KPIs. Key performance indicators for the blissfully ignorant. Anyway, with the new campaign came a new set of KPIs. Conversion rate, active call time, after call time and customer satisfaction were the KPIs of the day. Now these KPIs were normally all ducking bullshit. You needed to meet some ducking god their numbers in order to collect a half-decent paycheck. However, in this particular case there was loophole. See, due to the controversial nature of the NBN, we were told to focus on quality over quantity. They wanted an excellent customer experience, and the new KPIs were a reflection of that. As such, quantity of conversions was not a KPI, and when I questioned if we had time limits on calls, I was told, we don't care what you do, but long calls means a good experience, so keep them on the line and get them switched over. And so began the best work month I had at that soul trap. See, before entering comms I was a salesman in aged care, and a pretty good one at that. And you know that stereotype of old people talking for eternity and beyond? It's a stereotype for a reason. Each morning I would log in, volunteer for the aged clientele campaign, which was easy because they were normally the hardest people to convert, fearful of scams, technology and such, so not many people wanted to do it. And then I would start to chat. See, when speaking with the elderly, all it takes is a well-placed poke or two and you can literally have them speak for hours. So for the next month, I took 2 to 4 calls a day, down from 20 to 30, had almost zero after call time. The calls were so long I didn't need it, had an 80% conversion rate and 90% customer satisfaction. Turns out people tend to like you after you take the time to listen to them. Each phone call, assuming I wasn't told to duck off upon introducing myself, would last 2 to 3 hours minimum, with my record being a 7-hour call to a lovely bloke named Stan. He told some great war stories. I ended up doubling my normal paycheck. And my managers, while not being entirely happy with my nonsense, put up with it because at the end of the day, those were the rules and KPIs we were given. I got my paycheck, the oldies got a good chat, and my employer got to pay through the nose. Happy endings for all. I proceeded to hand in my resignation once KPIs went back to normal. Which I, to this day, regard as one of the best decisions I ever made. The next on is titled, Need Some Help with That Code? I have a passion for programming. I've had it all my life. People back at my high school knew about this, and rather than getting bullied, people would come ask me for help in their programming classes. I didn't take them because I already knew everything. Well, then Evan, not his real name, came along. If you can imagine your classic TV show bully, Evan was 10 times worse. He would go out of his way to make my life miserable and shame me for everything. As an example, I was walking down the hallway to my next class, when he spilled his drink on my pants and said, "Oh, look. Op peed himself." Again, this was in high school. I'd tried everything to get this guy to back down, but not even the principal would do anything. Well, the semester was almost over, and we would all be going to college soon. That meant that a lot of programming students would be coming to me asking for help on the final project. One such student, to my surprise and great satisfaction, was Evan. I asked Evan why he came to me, and he said, well, none of the other people would help me. I agreed to help him, and we exchanged numbers. As soon as I got home, I called one of the other programmers asking why he didn't help Evan. For context, all of the other programmers that I know have asked for money for their help, and I was the only one that worked for free. I heard a small sigh on the other end, and he told them that throughout the semester Evan had asked the programmers to each and every assignment he had. The worst part was, he never paid them back. I told him not to worry, and that I had a plan. Cue the malicious compliance. The assignment Evan sent me had some specific instructions, like name this variable new number, and use this in your code. I followed the instructions very carefully, but for the parts that weren't on the instructions I did something special too. I turned the code into what programmers call esoteric code, which basically means I made the code as short as it could possibly be, and by the end it was almost unreadable. Then, I sent it to him an hour before the deadline. He sent some very angry texts asking, "What is this?" and that I can't submit this, and I just told him he would have to. The next day in school, he was pale-faced and taking his things out of his locker. Turns out he had been expelled for plagiarism through the whole semester, and he would have to pay back every person that had helped him, which amounted to about $1,000, and he would have to take high school all over again. Spill a drink on me? Get expelled. Edit. I forgot to mention how he was caught. Because the code was esoteric code, which wasn't taught in the class, the teacher knew it was plagiarized. The next one is titled, "Am I Done Yet?" Not on your life, pal. So I'm a dental hygienist. I've been in this career for many years, I like what I do, and I enjoy chatting with my patients. I understand that getting your teeth cleaned isn't always the most fun thing to have done, and I've always strived for gentle yet thorough care. I sympathize with nervous people and people with sensitive teeth and gums. One thing I can't stand, though, is when people jokingly keep asking me, "Are you done yet?" This hilarious gem is a particular favorite among boomer men. Am I done yet? I've only touched 2 teeth, what do you think? Like wow, when did you become such a comedic genius, Daryl? So now, when someone starts the old "Are you done yet?" gem, I purposefully tack on an extra few minutes to their appointment. I take extra long to double-check all of my work, write some extremely detailed notes, and use a few minutes doing really slow flossing. I might have a conversation with my coworkers and eat a cookie in the staff room while I pretend to be getting the dentist. I do not, and would never, ever charge anyone for any extra time that my lollygagging takes. But if they keep bugging me to hurry it up, their butt is guaranteed to be in that chair for just a little bit longer. The last one is titled, "Realtor Refuses to Do His Job, so we get him to cancel the contract on his own." What a loon. My better half and I are in the market for a home. We've been casually searching for 4 years, and this year we really kicked it into gear. We nailed down where we wanted to live, our price range, got approved, and actually found a house we wanted to put an offer on. We contacted an agent my husband found and said he thought he wanted to work with due to the guy's other interests and the niche he'd built himself in that area, right up our alley. Against my better judgment, we signed with the guy as our buyer's agent. I'll call him Agent Douche for the purposes of this story. So, Agent Douche was our exclusive buyer's agent. I personally thought he was a yes man, but my husband didn't see it. He knew we would be buying sight unseen, cannot be helped, yes, it's unwise. He went to this property and had only glowing reviews. We asked if he saw any signs of water damage, husband has mold sickness, have to be careful, and he emphatically said there was none whatsoever. It was pristine. He kept telling us how amazing it was, how it wouldn't last, and how we'd better offer a decent chunk over asking if we want to have a chance at it. We did not feel that was a good idea. Against his advice, we offered below asking, and it was readily accepted. The first red flag for me was the agent forcefully urging me to offer above asking with no other offers on the table. So, we get the inspection, a guy Agent Douche recommended personally and ended up paying twice what it should have cost, $875. I'll give the inspector credit, though, that the report was exceedingly thorough, and we got it back within a day. A cursory glance at the inspection report, though, showed a large area of the wood floor under a window in the living room, in plain sight to Agent Douche, was black from water seeping in. The guy says he's got 15 years of experience, he should have seen that. But he isn't an inspector, and that's not necessarily his job. But still, another sign he's playing yes man to get us to buy anything at the highest cost. Anyhow, we immediately back out of that deal and tell him why. He asks, "Are you mad at me?" I was taken aback by this question coming from a grown man who says he's an ex-Marine, but whatever. I tell him it's fine and that we must move on to another property. He seems quite upset by this but agrees. I get an email from the inspector 2 days later saying that he's gotten an email from the seller of that home asking for another copy of our inspection and that he will not send it to them without our consent as we own it. I immediately ask Agent Douche if he sent our inspection to the seller after we backed out, and he says he did and says, "I'm sorry, I should have asked." I tell the inspector that we do not want our inspection shared without our consent and that if the man wants another inspection, the seller was loaded, he can pay for his own. Over the next few weeks, Agent Douche sends us a handful of properties we had already excluded as out of our price range. Let me say, our price range is pretty high. If I can't find a home for under $500,000, I don't want one. I repeatedly tell him these are too expensive. There are homes within our range. Eventually, he relents and sends one or two within our range. He's still not sending us anything that fits our criteria, though, like not even a little, and we're actually doing all the legwork. I keep sending him homes we've found online. He comes up with one excuse or another as to why it won't work, but I tell him I want to see information on it. He's definitely irritated at this point but sends me bits and pieces of information over the course of days. After pulling out of the offer on the first home, Agent Douche has become increasingly difficult to reach. He's told my husband he's so busy that he must start turning people away. It becomes a running joke in our house. "Have you heard from Agent Douche about that house we sent him?" Ha ha, yeah right. Homes hitting the market at this point were going under contract within 24 hours due to low supply. So, him taking 2, 3, 4 days to get us basic information like whether or not there's an HOA or what it uses for heat are a detriment. He repeatedly urges us to make offers above asking on homes he hasn't even pulled info on, let alone set foot in. He says this is necessary because things are moving so quickly. I'm too uncomfortable to do this. He's playing around with $5,000 in earnest money, and just no. I realized pretty quickly that he took us as clients only because we'd found the home already, and he thought it would be quick money for him. Can't say I blame him on that, but when it became clear that it was not the right property, if he did not have time for us, he should have sent us on our way. We tell him we're feeling neglected, and it's taking too long to get answers on basic questions. He keeps saying, "It's no big deal," like that somehow makes me feel better about not buying a home because he's too busy for us. We ask him if there is someone else at his brokerage we can work with who has time, but he owns it, so there's not. We send him another home, and he actually went out and took a few 15-second videos there. We ended up making an offer. Again, he urges us to offer well over asking. I tell him that's not happening and offer $30,000 under. The sellers counted at 25 under, and this is accepted by us. 2 days into contract, I have to ask him if we are actually under contract. No contact from him one way or another, so no idea. He eventually responds and says we are. Okay, great. 4 days into our 10-day inspection period and we still haven't heard word one from him. I finally ask him if we're planning to schedule any inspections. He says, "I'll connect with you tonight," and then doesn't. The next day, 5 days into this inspection period, I tell him we'd like to cancel the contract and cancel our contract with him again. The mold test we need will take 5 to 7 days, so we literally can't get it inspected in the time left. He immediately calls me, and it does not go well. I tell him we're unhappy, he calls me unreasonable, again says, "It's no big deal, blah blah blah," but he begs for another chance. Literally he begged me. So, fine, whatever. One more chance. We find the perfect property and immediately email it to him. He says he's set an appointment to view it the next morning. 2 days later, he finally sends us a totally different, much more expensive property. I tell him my husband has left to go there already and may choose to see it when he's there, but that we are really interested in the other one we sent him and ask if he ever makes it out to see it. He responds with, "You should make an offer on this one as soon as possible." Like, what the duck, dude? So, again, I ask him point blank, "Did you go see the other home at XYZ or not?" And he finally admits he didn't bother going to see it. And now, since it's been 2 more days, there's an accepted offer. He will not go see it, so we might put a backup offer in. The next day, I receive videos of the more expensive property that I never asked for nor wanted. My husband then arrives, having 30 hours to go to this area to look at the area and some properties and meet Agent Douche. Husband texts updates on his trip to Agent Douche along the way but never gets a response. I speak to Agent Douche the night before, telling him my husband will be there in the morning. I tell him to please call and coordinate with him, that he's available now to speak. He told me he would when we ended our call, but didn't. The next day, my husband arrives. He texts to say he's arrived and Agent Douche has no response. He waits and waits but still nothing. Tries to call, no response. After another 7-ish hour, it's now dark, and our agent has ghosted him all day. Husband texts him to say we want out, that he's driven all the way here, and been ghosted. Agent Douche flips his crap. Like instantly. He says he didn't ghost anyone and that we never told him what day he was arriving or that he got there, obvious and provable lies, and he figured he'd want to rest the whole first day. With 30 hours each way, and a full week took off work for this, losing income, we did not want that, which he would have known had he asked or coordinated at all. Things fully collapse at this point and become outright hostile. He says immediately that we are in a contract with him, and there's nothing we can do. We have to work with him, or we can agree to pay him 3% or get a new agent to agree to pay him a referral fee. These are the only terms I'll agree to. It's your best option. You should take it. I think this would be reasonable if our reason for cancellation were not his own negligence. I tell him there is no way in hell I will allow him to profit for ducking us around. He literally laughs at me and says I have no choice. Bad idea. I have an attorney look over the contract, and yes, we're ducked contractually. Funnily enough, the attorney tells me he is very aware of this guy, and he does this all the time. He apologizes that we're in this mess but says there's nothing he can do about it. I ask him about posting reviews of our experience, that I'm worried about a defamation suit. He says that as long as it's true, and I have proof, I cannot be sued for defamation. I call the Real Estate Commission and speak with an investigator for the entire state. He asks where in the state this occurred, and I tell him. He says, "Is it Agent Douche?" and my jaw dropped. He says he gets a lot of calls about this guy, that there are lots of problems, but that he hides behind pretty ironclad contracts, so he continues to do this legally. He's been doing it for years, apparently. He tells us that if we try to circumvent the contract, we will almost certainly be sued by this man. He's done it before. I tell Agent Douche that the least he could do if he doesn't have time to do his job, is release us. Again, he laughs. I tell him I will report these actions to the Real Estate Commission. Ha ha ha, is his response. I tell him fine, then he can expect people to hear about what's happened to us online. He says, I will sue you. I tell him that I will only be posting a true account of events, with written proof, and therefore, it is not libelous, and he can sue me but will not win. He replies, "You two are psychopaths." Now I really start to get angry. I emailed Agent Douche and told him point blank that if his terms for cancellation were not acceptable to me and mine were not acceptable to him, then we are still legally bound. As such, I fully expect him to do his job. I sent a list of houses we would never otherwise consider. He did nothing for 2 days, and for 2 days, I asked him probably 10 times a day to send me documentation on them. He asked if I even meant to send those to him, and I said, "Of course, you're my agent, are you not?" He sweetly replies that he is and that he'll send the information that evening. I send him like 8 more listings, all in a different geographical area. The contract was for the entire state, and all well below our price limit. Like, some were under $100,000, and all were really rough. That evening, Agent Douche starts to try to team up with my husband against me. For some reason, he thinks this tactic will work because my husband avoids confrontation whenever possible. He emails my husband. He forwards the listings I've sent and asks my husband if I am mentally unstable and says he thinks he should get me some help. It does not go well, and my husband tells him to pump his brakes and that he has no right to talk about me that way. Agent Douche doesn't respond. Instead, he writes me, telling me he thinks I'm unstable. His logic is that I'm not happy with him and don't want to work with him, and now I'm sending him properties, so I must be mentally incompetent. I tell him again that we have 4 months left on our contract, and I am under no obligation to accept his terms for cancellation if they do not benefit me, just like he is not obligated to accept mine. He emails my husband again, saying that he's got some agents who will be really nice to Mizzle, and my husband just says, "We don't need your referrals, dude." Next day, another agent calls me. Agent Douche wants me to sign with them instead, and they've already agreed to accept less commission, so he will be paid. I have a lovely chat with the nice couple on the phone and then tell them flatly that under no circumstances will I allow him to profit financially for doing this to us. He's become openly hostile, rude, and calls us names. They didn't really know what to say, so we amicably ended the call. They call me back a bit later, I suppose after talking to Agent Douche, and ask again if I'll consider signing with them just to be done with the situation, that buyers don't even pay the commission, and that they will even pay for my inspection. Wow. Once more I tell them no, that is not their responsibility, and I won't allow them to go out of pocket for this clown. I tell them in no uncertain terms that I would choose to wait out this contract before signing with anyone else, and that I might consider signing with them. I never would because of their affiliation with him, but only if we were released fully from the contract beforehand. I told them that if we somehow decided to purchase one of the 2 homes he showed us, that I would feel obligated to pay him, but short of that, there is no way. Agent Douche emails and texts more, calling me more names for refusing to sign his cancellation terms, even though he's done the same to me. I again send him a handful of crappy listings and very valid reasons I might want each property. He says nothing, and I ask him every 2 to 3 hours to send me documentation on them, and that if he's still our agent, he's obligated to do something, and that he cannot legally refuse to fulfill his contractual duties and still keep us in the contract. He must choose. At this point, I'm building a pretty solid paper trail of begging him to do what he is contractually obligated to do and evidence of his refusal. Agent Douche has started to realize that I am not going to go away. I keep sending him properties and keep at him to send me info, which he never does. Finally, mercifully, Agent Douche texts me that he is terminating us as clients and that we are free to work with whoever we want. 2 days later, he finally sends me the contract cancellation. We are elated and sign quickly as it all is in order. After, though, I take a very close look at his actual signature on the page. He signed the cancellation duck off instead of Agent Douche. Guy's a real class act. Luckily, our attorney said through his laughs that the cancellation is still binding, and if he did try to take us to court, he'd obviously have to explain to a judge that he signed a legal document with an expletive. He assured us that we finally were done with him. The Real Estate Commission investigator had actually asked me to keep him updated on the outcome of the situation. So, after hearing back from the lawyer that we were indeed done, I called him back to tell him. I told him exactly what happened and that I just forced him to work with us until he realized he'd have 4 more months of me still not going away, so he cancelled. Mr. Nice Investigator could not stop laughing. He told me Agent Douche calls him regularly and uses him as a point of contact because none of the other investigators will speak to him. He tells me the guy has a few screws loose. I tell him I hope he will tell anyone else in our position what worked and to feel free to pass my info along if necessary. He readily accepts that offer, and we jovially end the call. In the end, I'm very glad I stood up to this a-hole, and I have 0 regrets. We called his bluff, and I can pretty well bet that no one had done that to him before. He was absolutely used to bullying people into getting his way. Thanks for listening.